Yeah, hello my dear students of class 11 science. So welcome to biology class. We are dealing with the chapter photosynthesis in higher plants. In the last class we were discussing about the topic photosystem. It's in the page number 13.11 and we have learned about the photosystem 1 and photosystem 2, also called PS1 and PS2. And we learned that the PS1 has got the light harvesting complex called LHC1. Okay, then we learned that it's also called 700 nanometer P700. Now what does this P700 means? That means it absorbs the light of wavelength 700 nanometer. Then we also learned about PS2, which is also called the photosystem 2, and it has got the light harvesting complex called LHC2, and it's also called P680. P680 means that it will absorb the light of wavelength 680 nanometer. So for this you have to go to the page number 13.11. clear? You will get the topic photosystems. Now today we will discuss about the electron transport systems in the photosystem 1 and 2. Okay, so we are going to discuss about the electron transport system along the PS1 and the PS2. Clear? So first of all, remember that PS2 will absorb the light of wavelength 680 nanometer. It's called P680. Then PS1 will absorb the light of wavelength 700 nanometers, which is called P700. Okay, so now between this PS1 and PS2 we are going to discuss about the flow of electron, also called electron transport system, that will lead to the formation of ATP and NADPH. Clear? So let's see the flow of electron through the photosystem. Clear? So in electron transport systems, very carefully, in photosystem 2, so first of all we have got the PS2, you keep in mind. Okay, so in electron transport system, clear, the PS2 or the photosystem 2 has got the reaction center. Okay, each and every light harvesting complex has got a reaction center, we have done already, and you have the core molecule and the antennae molecule. So here the PS2, okay, in PS2 the reaction center, the chlorophyll A, remember in PS2 the chlorophyll A, the reaction center, will absorb the light of wavelength 680 nanometer, which is called P680. Okay, so 680 nanometer of wavelength of light, red light, will be absorbed by the reaction center of the photosystem 2. Clear? So when the reaction center of the photosystem 2 will absorb the 680 nanometer wavelength of red light, the electron will be excited. Clear? So in the PS2, after absorbing those wavelength of light, that is 680 nanometer of light, the electrons in the PS2 will get excited. Okay, and it will jump further from the atomic nucleus. So electrons will be excited and it will jump from the atomic nucleus. Now when the electron moves from the reaction center of the PS2, that electron will be accepted by the electron acceptor. You can see over here, electron acceptor. So light is being absorbed by the LHC of PS2. After absorbing the light of wavelength 680 nanometer, the electrons from the reaction center of LHC2 will get excited and that electrons will be received by the electron acceptor. Clear? Okay, now that electron acceptor mainly consists of cytochromes. In the last class we have learned about the composition of PS2 and PS1. Okay, so the electron acceptor of PS2 will absorb those light energy, or those electrons is mainly composed of cytochromes. Okay, now the movement of this electron is downhill in terms of oxidation reduction reaction, because once the electrons will be accepted by the electron acceptor of the light harvesting complex or of the PS2, the electron moves towards the electron transport system. So it's mainly the downhill movement of the electrons. Okay, now the electrons are used up. Listen very carefully. The electrons are not used up as they pass through the electron transport chain. Clear? That means the electrons which are given by the reaction center of the PS2 are not utilized once they move through the electron transport system, but they are passed to the pigment of the photosystem 1. Listen very carefully. The electrons which is being excited in the reaction center of the PS2 will be taken up by the electron acceptor of the PS2 and will move through the downhill through the electron transport system. Clear? But those electrons will not be utilized, but they will be picked up or they will be received by the light harvesting complex of PS1. So electron from the PS2 is being moved to the PS1. Clear? Now, once the PS1 will receive the electrons from the PS2 or through the electron transport systems, the electrons in the reaction center of the PS1 also become excited. Okay, so what we have learned till now, that the reaction center of the PS2 will absorb the light having wavelength 680 nanometer. Now once it will receive this light, the electrons will become excited in the PS2 reaction center. The electrons will jump from atomic nucleus, will be received by the electron acceptor, and that electrons will move through the electron transport system. While moving downhill through the electron transport system, the electron will not be utilized, but it will be received or it will be absorbed by the pigments of the photosystem 1. Now when the photosystem 1 will receive the electrons, now it becomes excited. Okay, and it also become excited on receiving the light of wavelength having how many nanometer? 700 nanometer. So now the electrons in the PS1 also become excited. Okay, now those electrons are now transferred to the electron acceptor. You can see over here. Okay, in the PS1 we have got the electron acceptor. So the electrons which are being excited in the PS1 will be received by the electron acceptor of the PS1 that has a greater redox potential. Okay, now this electron also move downhill. Clear? This electron also move downhill to a molecule of energy rich NADP plus. Clear? So by the addition of this electron, NADP plus will be reduced to NADPH plus hydrogen ion. So this is the flow of electron through the electron transport system along the PS2 and the PS1. So one more time I am going to briefly explain this thing. Okay, so we are learning the electron transport system through the PS2 and PS1. Remember, PS2 will get excited by receiving the light of wavelength 680 nanometers, which is also called P680. Similarly, PS1 will be excited on receiving the light of wavelength having 700 nanometer, which is called P700. The composition of both PS2 and PS1 we have learned in our previous classes, so kindly go through that video. Clear? So now let's talk about the flow of electron to the PS2 and the PS1. So first of all, the reaction center of the PS2 will receive the light having the wavelength 680 nanometer. So once the reaction center of the PS2 will receive the light having wavelength 680 nanometer, the electron will become excited and the electron will jump from the atomic nucleus. Now that electrons will be received by the electron acceptor of the PS2. Clear? And the movement will be downhill as it will move through the electron transport system. But while moving through the electron transport system, the electrons will not be utilized, but it will be received by the pigments of the PS1. Now the electrons of the PS1 will also become excited, okay, when it will receive the light of having wavelength 700 nanometer. Now again the electron in the PS1 has become excited. It will jump from the atomic nucleus and it will be received by the electron acceptor of the PS1. Okay, and that electrons will move the downhill and it will be utilized to convert the NADP plus to NADPH. Okay, because it will be moving downhill to a molecule of energy rich NADP plus. So once this NADP plus will receive those electrons, it will be reduced to NADPH plus hydrogen ions. So this is called the jet schemes of light reactions, or the flow of electrons to the PS2 and the PS1. Clear? So can you go through the page number 13.1 through regarding the electron transport system through the PS2 and the PS1. Hope it's clear for you. Okay, now so this particular movement of electron through the PS2 and the PS1 is also called jet scheme. Remember, if you look over here, so movement of electron from the PS2 to electron acceptor, okay, then again the electron comes downhill towards the PS1 reaction center and it will be given to the electron acceptor of PS1. So this is called the jet scheme flow of electrons to the PS2 and the PS1. So now let's see the next topic, which is called the photolyze the water. Okay, I will just teach through this diagram only, so listen very carefully. We are talking about the photolysis of water or splitting of water, because during photolysis there will be splitting of water molecules also. Okay, so let's talk about this one. It's in the page number 13.13. Now, photosystem 2, listen very carefully. PS2 or the photosystem 2 is also characterized by the splitting of water or the breakdown of water, which is also called the photolysis of water. Clear? So PS2 is also characterized by the splitting of water or by the photolysis of water, where there will be release of oxygen. Clear? So when PS2 will absorb the light having 680 nanometer, electrons will be released. That we have done already. Okay, so when the PS2 absorbs the light having 680 nanometer, the electrons will be released and the chlorophyll molecules will be oxidized. Clear? The electrons emitted by P680. Now I am telling you P680. Remember, P680 means the reaction center of photosystem 2. Why we are calling it P680? Because it will absorb the light of light having the wavelength 680 nanometer. Okay, so electrons which is emitted by the P680 of PS2 is trapped by P700 of which photosystem? Of photosystem 1. Clear? So the electrons which is being released by the P680 of PS2 will be trapped by the P700 reaction center of PS1. PS1 means photosystem 1. P700 means it will absorb the light having wavelength of 700 nanometer. Clear? The oxidized P680, because we are saying that the chlorophyll molecules will be oxidized in the PS2. Okay, so the oxidized P680 will regain its electrons from where? By the photolysis of water. Clear? So this is simply the photolysis of water. So here we have learned that the PS2 is mainly characterized by the photolysis of water, so that there will be continuous flow of supply of electron. So when the PS2 will receive the light having the wavelength 680 nanometer, the electrons will be excited. Clear? The electrons will be emitted by the P680, and at the same time the chlorophyll molecules will be oxidized. The electrons which is emitted by the P680 of PS2 will be trapped by the P700 of PS1. But at the same time, the oxidized P680 of PS2 will receive the electrons from where? By the photolysis of water. Clear? So this is simply, we can see the continuous flow of electrons to the PS2 and the PS1. So PS2, by the breakdown of water or by the photolysis of water, there is continuous supply of electrons. Clear? So kindly go through the page number 13.13 also regarding the photolysis of water. Now next topic we learn about the mechanism of photosynthesis. Okay, so mechanism of photosynthesis involve two distinct reactions. First one is light dependent reactions, also called Hill reaction or photochemical phase. Clear? And the second one is called dark or light independent reactions or the biosynthetic phase. So we have got two distinct phases or the reactions of photosynthesis. So first one is called light dependent reaction and the second one is called dark or light independent reaction. So let's talk about the first one, which is called the light dependent reaction or Hill reactions, or also called the photochemical phase of photosynthesis. Okay, so since the name tells light dependent phase, so this reaction occurs in the presence of light and it takes place in the thylakoid membrane of grana and the stroma lamellae. Okay, so this reaction takes place in the presence of sunlight and it takes place in the thylakoid membrane of grana and the stroma lamellae. Now this particular phase is characterized by the absorption of light rays by the PS1 and the PS2. So here PS1 and PS2 will absorb the light rays, and that absorbed light rays will be converted into the chemical energy, where it will be stored energy or stored food in the form of ATP and NADPH plus H plus. Clear? So what you learn is that light dependent reaction takes place in the presence of light, and the site is mainly the thylakoid membrane of the grana and the stroma lamellae. Okay, In this particular phase, the light rays will be trapped by both PS2 and the PS1, and that absorbed light will be converted into chemical energy in the form of ATP and NADPH and H+. Okay, so since over here the energy is being trapped, it's being utilized for the formation of ATP, NADPH and H+, it is also called photochemical reaction or photochemical phase. Okay, so what are the steps under the light dependent reactions? We have got the 4 steps you can see over here. We have got absorption of light, excitation of reaction center, photosynthetic electron transport and formation of asymmetry energy. Then we have got photophosphorylation and ATP synthesis. So we have got 4 steps under the Hill reactions or the light dependent reaction. So let's see the first step, that is absorption of light. So here the light harvesting complex of both PS2 and the PS1 will absorb the light. Okay, so the various pigments of light harvesting complex LHC of PS2 and PS1. Now I'm telling the term PS2 and PS1. PS2 means photosystem 2 and PS1 means photosystem 1. Okay, so PS2 also called P680 and PS1 called P700. Now you know why we call it P680 and P700. Clear? So what means that the pigments of light harvesting complex of PS1 and PS2 will absorb the sun rays of different wavelengths. Clear? And when they use to transfer the light of different wavelengths, they will transfer this energy to the respective center. So PS2 will absorb the light having wavelength 680 nanometer and PS1 will absorb the light having wavelength 700 nanometer, and after absorbing those light they will transfer this energy to the respective reaction centers. Clear? Then after transferring those lights of different wavelengths to the reaction center, the number 2 step is the excitation of reaction center. So on receiving the light energy from the respective LHC means light harvesting complexes, reaction center of both PS1 and PS2 will become activated. Clear? So once the LHC of PS1 and PS2 will receive the light energy, the reaction centers of both PS1 and PS2 will become excited, and once they become excited, the electrons of both the reaction center of PS1 and PS2 will also become excited. Now these excited electrons will leave the reaction center, and those electrons will be received by the electron acceptor. So due to the transfer of electrons, P680 and P700 becomes electron deficient or highly oxidized. So what we have learned till now is that, let's go back to the figure, that the PS2 and the PS1 will receive the light of wavelength 680 nanometer and 700 nanometer. PS2 is also called P680 and PS1 is called P700. So when the LHC of PS2 and PS1 will receive the light of different wavelengths, they will transfer those light into the respective reaction center. Clear? Now once the reaction center will receive the lights or having wavelength 680 nanometer and 700 nanometer, the electron becomes excited. Now the electrons from the PS2 reaction center will be received by the electron acceptor. Okay, and similarly the electrons from the LHC or from the reaction center of PS1 will be received by the electrons acceptor of PS1. Okay, now both the PS2 and the PS1 reaction center will become electron deficient or they will become highly oxidized. Clear? After that we have got number 3 process, which is called the photosynthetic electron transport and the formation of assimilatory energy. So let's go in details. So electrons released from the reaction center of both the PS2 and the PS1 will be received by the primary electron acceptor. Now let's see the electron acceptor of PS2 and the PS1. Okay, so electron which is released from the reaction center of PS2 will be received by the primary electron acceptor, which is called the phyophytin. Okay, so phyophytin is the primary electron acceptor of PS2. Similarly, the electron acceptor, listen very carefully, okay, the electron acceptor of PS1, that means the electron which will be released from the reaction center of PS1 will be received by the primary electron acceptor, which is mainly composed of ferredoxin pigment P430. Okay, so let's see the flow of electrons. So in case of PS2, once the phyophytin, the primary electron acceptor will receive the electrons, the electron moves downhill along the electron transport chain to P7O that we have learned already. So from the pH2, the electron goes to the primary electron acceptor, and from there the electron moves towards the P7OO. Okay, so they will move from pheophytin to plastoquinine, cytochrome complex, okay, and also plastocyanin. And during this transfer of energy through the electron transfer systems, electron will lose the energy which is used to generate ATP. Okay, so when the electron will move through the electron transfer system through the ATP, through the pH2, through the electron transfer systems, the electrons will lose the energy, and that electrons will be used to generate the ATP. Okay, and finally the exhausted electrons, which will be like devoid of energy, are being given to PS1. So let's go back to the figure. So here we can see that the electrons of the light harvesting complex of pH2 will become excited when it will receive the light. So LHC, or the reaction center of pH2, will receive the light. It becomes excited. The electrons will be given to the electron acceptor of pH2, clear, and from the electron acceptor the electron will move through the electron transport system downhill. Okay, so while moving through the electron transport system, the electron will lose the energy, and that will be utilized for the formation of ATP. Okay, and finally the exhausted electron, that means the electron which are devoid of energy, will be donated or will be given to the PS1. Clear this one? Okay, now let's talk about the PS1. Okay, so electron released from the reaction center of PS1 are received by the primary electron, which is mainly composed of ferredoxin pigment we have learned already. Okay, now from here also the electron will move down to the ferredoxin NADP oxidoreductase. Clear? And over here the NADP is reduced to NADPH, and this causes the reduction of carbon dioxide to sugar during back reaction of photosynthesis and provide necessary energy. So again, let's see that once the light harvesting complex or the reaction center of photosystem 1 will receive the electrons from the PS2, now the electrons will be excited in the reaction center of PS1. Those excited electrons will be received by the electron acceptor of PS1, and it will move again downhill, and that electron will be utilized for the reduction of NADP plus to NADPH, and this NADPH will be utilized in the dark phase of photosynthesis for the formation of sugar. Okay, and to provide necessary energy. So this is the third steps of light dependent reaction, and let's talk about the fourth step, photophosphorylations and ATP synthesis. So in PS2, when electron moves down the photosynthetic electron transport chain, they gradually lose their energy that we have learned. Okay, and that energy will be utilized for the formation of ATP from ATP. So photophosphorylation, photo means light. Okay, now since there is formation of ATP, okay, since there is formation of ATP in the presence of light, it is called photophosphorylation. So what we have learned in photophosphorylation, that when the electrons will move from the pH2 downhill, the electrons will lose their energy, and that energy will be utilized for the formation of ATP from ADP. ATP means adenosine triphosphate, which is the form of energy. Clear? Now since there is formation of ATP from ADP in the presence of light, this particular reaction or the process is also called photophosphorylation. So during the flow of electrons from the PS2, there is formation of ATP, and during the flow of electrons from the PS1, there is formation of NADPH plus hydrogen ions. So keep in your mind. Okay, so now let's talk about the next one, the non-cyclic and the cyclic photophosphorylation, because we are learning about photophosphorylation. Photo means light, so in the presence of light, ATP is being synthesized. Okay, so we have got two types of photophosphorylation. One is called the non-cyclic photophosphorylation, and the second one is called cyclic photophosphorylation. So let's talk about the cyclic and the non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay, what do this means? Okay, now after losing their energy during transport, electrons can be used in following two ways. Because when the electron moves through the electron transport system, energy will be lost. Okay, and electrons can be mainly utilized in the two ways. Electrons from PS2 are used by PS1, which is called non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Listen very carefully. Electrons from the PS2 are used by PS1, and this is called non-cyclic photophosphorylation. And number 2, electrons from the PS1 return to the same photosystem. That means electrons from the PS1 will return to the PS1 only, and this is called cyclic photophosphorylation. So when the electron move from PS2 to PS1, that is called non-cyclic photophosphorylation. But when the electron from the PS1 return back to PS1, then that is called cyclic photophosphorylation. Clear? So let's talk about the non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay, so this non-cyclic photophosphorylation, it occurs in green plants during bright sunlight during daytime. Okay, and it involves both PS1 and PS2. Clear? So PS2 will receive the light of wavelength 680 nanometer and it becomes excited, and when it becomes excited, the electrons will be emitted from it, and that electrons will be charged, and that electrons from the PS2 will be utilized for the photolysis of water and will come back to the normal state. So what you know is that PS2 will receive the light of wavelength 680 nanometer and it becomes excited or activated. Okay, now its electrons becomes energized, it becomes full of energy, energetic. Okay, and that electrons come out from the reaction center of PS2, making it positively charged, and that positively charged PS2 will obtain the electrons from the photolysis of water, because we have learned that PS2 is characterized by the photolysis of water, and this process will continuously supply the electrons. So the positively charged PS2 will obtain the electrons by the photolysis of water and return back to the normal state. Okay, now the electron is moving from the PS2 because it has become excited, it has become activated, and it will be released from the reaction center of PS2. It will be received by the electron acceptor. It will move downhill through the electron transport system and goes to the PS1. Okay, so the electron that will escape the PS2 will be accepted by the primary electron acceptor, that is pheophytin, and will be transferred to the electron transport system of PS2 to the PS1. Clear? Now while traveling, let's see, while traveling down the electron transport chain, listen, you have to follow that figure, okay, that diagram 13.12, and it will be clear for you. So once the electron will move the downhill through the electron transport system, it will lose energy. Clear? And while moving down through the electron transport systems, the electron is losing energy, which is being utilized for the formation of ATP. Okay, so elimination of PS1 by the light of longer wavelength 700 nanometer will excite its electron. So PS1 will receive the light having the wavelength of 700 nanometer, and on that process the electrons of PS1 become excited. It will come back to higher energy state. Okay, now that electrons which have become excited will come out from the reaction center of PS1 and will be accepted by the electron acceptor. Okay, now that electron acceptor, after receiving the electrons, will move downhill, and when the electron will move downhill to the electron transport systems, that electrons will be utilized for the formation of NADPH. Okay, now since, listen very carefully, in PS2 when the electron was moving downhill through the ETS, electron transport system, there is formation of ATP. But in PS1 when the electron is moving downhill, okay, from the electron transport system, that electron is utilized for the formation of NADPH from NADP. Okay, so from ferredoxins, electrons go down to NADP, which also receive 2 hydrogen ions produced from photolysis of water and will reduce to NADPH. Now due to its characteristic zigzag shape based on the redox potential, different electron carrier is also called jet scheme. So here you can see that the electron which is given by the PS2 to the PS1 is being utilized for the formation of NADPH. So one more time saying that non-cyclic photophosphorylation involves both PS1 and PS2. PS2 will become excited after receiving the light of wavelength 680 nanometer, that's called P680. Okay, so when it will receive the light of wavelength 680 nanometer, its electron becomes full of energy, it becomes excited. Clear? And that electrons very carefully, that electrons will move through the reaction center of pH2 and will be accepted by the electron acceptor, pheophytin of pH2, and will move through the electron transport systems. While moving down through the electron transport systems, energy will be lost and will be utilized for the formation of ATP from ADP. Now the PS1 was being excited after receiving the light of wavelength 700 nanometer and also receiving the electrons from the pH2, which is like devoid of energy, or which is mainly like let's say which is little less in energy. Okay, so now the electrons of pH1 will become excited once you receive the light wavelength 700 nanometer, and that electrons will be emitted from the reaction center of PS1, will be accepted by the electron acceptor, and will move through the electron downhill through the electron transport systems, where it will utilize for the formation of NADPH from NADP. And since the flow of energy or the electrons occurs in a zigzag manner, it's also called jet scheme. Okay, so here the electrons given by the pH2 is being utilized by the PS1 for the formation of NADPH. Okay, so it is called photophosphorylation, but it is non-cyclic photophosphorylation because the electron is being utilized, okay, for the formation of NADPH. And how does the pH2 will receive the electrons? Simply it will receive the electrons by the photolysis of water. So let's talk about the main events of non-cyclic photophosphorylations. So both pH1 and pH2 are involved in non-cyclic photophosphorylations. In that case, pH2 is mainly involved with the photolysis of water. There will be synthesis of oxygens, there will be formation of ATP, there will be formation of NADPH. Clear? Now let's go to the cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay, now cyclic photophosphorylation only involve PS1, photosystem 1. I'm telling you that cyclic photophosphorylation, it only involves the photosystem 1. Okay, in this case pH2 becomes non-functional. Only PS1 is involved in cyclic photophosphorylations. Clear? So whenever the lights having longer wavelength of 7 nanometer or above is available, then PS1 gets activated. Clear? Because PS1 will receive the light having wavelength of 700 nanometer. So whenever the lights having the longer wavelengths of nearly 700 nanometer or above is available, then PS1 will be activated, and in this case PS2 will become inactive. Clear? So when the photons activate PS1, a pair of electrons of P700 reaction centers are raised to a high energy level. So when the reaction center of P700 will receive the light having wavelength 700 nanometer, the electrons in the reaction center of P700 becomes excited. Okay, and it will leave the reaction center, and electron hole will be created in the reaction center of PS1. Clear? Now those electrons will be captured by the primary electron acceptor that we have done already, and which passes from the ferredoxin to the plastoquinine to the cytochrome complex, then plastocyanin, and finally it goes back to the chlorophyll P700 or PS1, thus filling the electron hole. So we are saying that the reaction center of the PS1 will become excited when it will receive the light of having wavelength 700 nanometer, and in this case whenever it will absorb the photons of having light having 700 nanometer wavelength, the pair of electrons become excited in the reaction center of PS1, and this will leave the electrons, and this will cause the electrons to leave the PS1 reaction center, creating an electron hole. Okay, so those electrons will be captured by the primary electron acceptor, which passes them on the ferredoxin, plastoquinine, cytochrome complex, plastocyanin, and finally those electrons will come back to the chlorophyll P700 PaS1, thus filling the electron holes. In this way the cycle will be completed. Okay, at each stage of electron transport system, the electrons will lose their potential energy. Okay, their trip downhill is used by the transport chain to pump hydrogen ion across the thylakoid membrane. Since the proton gradient triggers ATP synthesis, this is also termed as cyclic photophosphorylations. Since this involves only pigment PS1, photolysis of water, and consequent evolution of oxygen does not take place. Also, there is no synthesis of NADPH in case of cyclic photophosphorylation, because what is happening is that the reaction center of PS1, look over here, that the reaction center of PS1 will receive the light of wavelength 700 nanometer, and on that the electrons will become excited. Electrons will leave the reaction center and will be accepted by the electron acceptor. Now what happens is that when the electron will move through the reaction center of PS1, the electrons will be created over here, okay, and those excited electrons which has left the reaction center of PS1 will be accepted by the electron acceptor, will move through the ferredoxin, okay, will move through the plastoquinine, will move through the cytochrome complex, will move through the plastoquinine. That means it will move through the electron transfer system, and finally again it will come back to the reaction center of PS1. So here you can see that is the cyclic flow of electron in the PS1, and here there is formation of ATP also, because the electrons while moving through the ETS, that's electron transport system, will lose the energy and it will be utilized for the formation of ATP. But in this process, since only PS1 is involved, there is no involvement of PS2, so there is no photolysis of water, there is no evolution of oxygen, and in fact there is no formation of NADPH also. Okay, so we have finished about the cyclic and the non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Let us see the main events of cyclic photophosphorylation. Only one photosystem PS1 is involved. There is no photolysis of water, there is no evolution of oxygen, there is no formation of NADPH in cyclic photophosphorylation. Clear? So now let us talk about the difference between non-cyclic photophosphorylation and the cyclic photophosphorylation. Non-cyclic photophosphorylation, both PS2 and PS1 are involved, but in cyclic only PS1 is involved. Okay, in non-cyclic it requires an external electron donor, but cyclic, since the same electrons are cycled, an external source of electrons is not required. In non-cyclic, listen very carefully, in non-cyclic it requires an external electron donor, but in cyclic the same electrons will be utilized again and again. Okay, in non-cyclic it is concerned with the photolysis of water along with the release of oxygen, but in cyclic there is no formation of oxygen, there is no splitting of water molecules. Non-cyclic, it is connected with ATP synthesis and production of NADPH, but cyclic, there is only formation of ATP, there is no formation of NADPH. Okay, non-cyclic, it takes place under optimum light aerobic condition and presence of carbon dioxide. Cyclic, it operates under low light intensity under anaerobic conditions or when carbon dioxide availability is less. Okay, sixth point, non-cyclic, this system is concerned with the carbon dioxide fixation in all plants, whereas cyclic, it does not take part in all plants except in certain bacteria and C4 plants. C3 and C4 plants will talk in next class. Okay, non-cyclics occur in granule thylakoids, whereas cyclic it occurs in stroma or intergranule thylakoids. And last point, number 8, non-cyclics occurs under normal conditions, whereas cyclics it occurs under special conditions when NADPH start accumulating. Okay, so here we have finished about the cyclic and the non-cyclic photophosphorylations, and for you the figure number 13.12 is very important. And do remember what does P680 and what does P700 means, and remember the flow of electrons or the electron transfer system through the PS2 and the PS1. Once you will go through the, or once your concept of electron transfer system through PS2 and PS1 will be clear, then the cyclic and non-cyclic photophosphorylation will also become clear and easier for you. Okay, so this was for today's class. See you in next class. Thank you.